So we've finally gotten around to processing our wax from the 2020 year. We have a pretty redneck setup, but it appears to be working. This is our first year playing with it. Over here we just have a old stock pot full of boiling water, hose coming out of it, feeding into the side of this box underneath of this pan here, because I had a similar design last year. That the trouble was is the wax wanted to solidify on the pan, so now the steam, because the boiling water steam comes through the pipe, feeds in the side here underneath the pan, gets the pan nice and hot, and I have holes cut out in the back corner where the steam can get up through, and there's a layer of 1/4-inch hardware cloth here that we dumped all of our wax from dead outs and cutouts and all the big bulky comb that we couldn't process properly was dumped in here. We'll melt the wax out of it, leave all the cocoons behind, and it'll give us a much more manageable block to do later refining. Because as you can see, this stuff is coming out dirty. There's wax moths got in, so there's a little bit of wax moth castings that we're going to have to filter out. Still perfectly good wax, but it just needs to be filtered. But in order to filter it properly, we need to get it from a big bulky comb into manageable melted wax. So this is step 2 of the process. Again, we're doing this for the first time, so we're making mistakes and learning from it, but pretty simple double boiler setup. We're using the same pot that we used to boil water for the drip assembly, and now we just took the cakes that came out of that, let them solidify, broke them up, and threw them in here, and now we're melting them again. There's a little bit of water in the bottom of this pot, so by the time we're done, the wax will set up any impurities that are lighter will go to the top, and any impurities that are heavier than the wax will go to the bottom and sit between the water layer and the wax layer. So we should be able to just dump the entire solidified chunk out and scrape any junk off, and then remelt this and cast it in the molds for the second time around. So we finished up melting down our comb wax a couple days ago, and the wax is solidified nicely, and we haven't dumped it out yet, but looking at it, we can clearly see that the debris has settled out quite nicely. So we're going to get this cleaned up and get the pot ready to melt down our capping wax. Could have went right into the drain with it, my dude. Could have. I didn't want to dump this thing into the pit, though. Oh my. Look at that. That's a chunk of wax. It's more than I thought there was. Me. So at this point, we're just going to scrape off the wax that has dirt stuck in it, both on the top and the bottom, and probably save that for a wax melt at a later date. But at that point, this block of candle wax will be ready to be, I guess, melted down again and cast into ingots. We'll see what we decide to do with it. We're not quite ready to make candles yet, but I'm sure we'll be getting there eventually. This is the final step of our redneck wax rendering process. The first attempt at cleaning out most of the impurities did work rather well, but there is still some debris embedded in the wax. So what we did is we took the big chunk and whacked it with a hammer a bunch of times, and eventually broke up into smaller chunks, which we could melt easier. And they are now in here in an old pillowcase, which we're going to feed all the wax through and melt it inside the pillowcase, and then we should be able to pull the pillowcase up out and let the wax run through. Which will trap almost all, if not all, of the debris inside of the pillowcase. It's inefficient, it's slow, but at this scale it works, and it works great, so that's how we're going to be doing it. So at this step, he's going to pull the pillowcase out. We're going to let as much drain out of it as possible. And then towards the end, I'm probably going to wind up squeezing the last of the wax out.
It's been melting for about an hour now, so it's pretty well liquid. We'll do the best we can and try not to start a fire.
It's not fun to do it by hand, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Not a perfect method, but it will.
Still some pretty big clumps in there, isn't there? Yeah. Wonder if we should just leave it for a little longer.
Oh, there is. So, change of plans. There's still a big chunk in there. So we're going to pull that out, let this solidify, then we'll do a remelt with just this in the bag and hopefully reclaim some of this wax out of it. So that's the conclusion of our experiment with messing with beeswax. The first part of it, where we melted the wax with the steam, worked really well. We're quite proud of how that went. We probably lost a little bit of wax left over that absorbed into the cocoons that got left, but it worked really nicely. This stage, the first melt worked great, but then the second time around when we tried using the filter, we messed up on quite a few things. And the wax that we got out of it is really nice and clean. Like, this is good, but we lost patience partway through it, so there's a lot of wax still in there that didn't quite melt properly, and we should have kept the pillowcase out and around the container, because as it was, we put it in and it absorbed wax and it's just a mess at this point. I'm not sure when we're going to get around to messing with wax again. Could be a couple years in the future, because this was a little bit of a pain, but when we do that, we'll try to reclaim this absorbed wax and see how it goes. But all in all, we learned a lot, we got a little bit of usable wax, and we had fun doing it.